you name it. So for us, digitization is the way to go, and actually that is where we're heading. Actually, it so happens that that is my core mandate, to digitize government services. And to put into perspective, if a child is born, how do you get that child registered without having to go to a local office? You know, how do you enable the midwife or the doctor at the hospital to be able to register that child into the national registry system? So that is the core of what we're doing right now.
Taavi, when we look at a country like Estonia, former Soviet Union, in 1991 you got your independence, probably not the first country on everybody's mind when we looked at it back then. But the speed at which that country has actually taken on board digitization hasn't had to suffer, I think, the legacy of you know, different systems, good ones, bad ones. Again, it's really been the fast track for the country. What difference has it made, and how can then you help other countries?
Well, even though Estonia is between Eritrea and Ethiopia in the United Nations, that doesn't mean that we are geographically particularly close to you. We are very, very distant northern country, but as you said, Eithne, very correctly, we have a similarity, and that is the period of transition. When we regained our independence from the Soviet occupation, our economy was, you know, basically below zero. It was nothing like a modern economy should be. We had to start from the scratch. And the biggest success story, or the biggest key to our success, is that we did not have any legacy. We could start with the best technology, with the best solutions out there. And this is not only digital, this is also designing the best taxation system, which is ranked by the OECD to be the most competitive in the world, and also less bureaucracy and all those things, but this also is with digital. So if you can start from the scratch, you can, from the first point, be you know, introducing the best technologies there are.
Gary, talk about starting from scratch. You come from a very different industry. You had worked in development, you'd worked with the UN, you had a career in place, but you looked around and saw a particular interest, something that sparked you and thought, I can do this. Tell us just a little bit about that journey, because you came into the digital environment and the digital economy in a different way.
I come from an academic background in economics and having worked in various countries as an economic consultant. But seeing what was going on in the scene of technology, startups, and the digital economy, I was always drawn and attracted to it. So after learning the experiences of Silicon Valley, of companies like Google, like Facebook, in 2010 or so, I started venturing in internet companies and digital companies. And I founded a company called Cine Papaya, which was a platform for the sale of movie tickets in Latin America.
Again, a simple idea.
Something very simple, just how to look for movie information, simple through the internet, through mobile applications. And it was something that it can be done from Peru and with a simple technology to expand it to different countries. So the natural expansion was first Peru, then Chile, Colombia, Argentina, Mexico. At some point in time, we grew with a movie information platform in all of Latin America, and we expanded actually into Nigeria, South Africa, into the United Arab Emirates, and more than 23 countries around the world as a platform for movie information.
So again, it's the geographical limits. You know, those barriers are not there. You don't need a passport, you don't need a visa. It really has opened up a world. I want to come back to maybe looking at this in terms of the enabler that digital has become, particularly, you know, for people and for their lives, particularly since both of you have also worked in government, in the private sector and the public sector. Innocent, when you look at how this is making people's lives simpler, and particularly, as you say, you know, registering the birth of a child. I mean, this should not be a cumbersome event to do, but in many countries it is. Registering anything can be very difficult in many countries. Getting rid of that, I think maybe just the red tape and just the issues that really shouldn't be bothering people and let them get on with their lives. How has that made people's lives easier in Africa?
Yeah, it has brought about a tremendous change in people's lives. And I want to underline one statement here. Leadership is very critical. You need visionary leadership, because without that, the mindset is something that is very difficult to break. You need visionary leadership to be able to break that, because otherwise it hinders the whole process. I'll give you an example. About 5 years ago, we started, in the private sector, we started electronic tax payment.
Yes.
This was something that everybody was saying, look, this thing is not going to happen. We say, this is not going to happen. But because of that visionary leadership, we have moved from fiscal tax payment electronically to non-fiscal tax payment to the district collections today. These are being collected online as we speak. And we're not stopping there. We are going far. So as a small business owner, if I'm able to, in the comfort of my little shop, to pay my taxes, otherwise I could have gone and queued for 3 hours to pay, and after paying, I would have gone to now the tax authority to deposit my proof of payment. But the two processes that would have taken me more than 6 hours, I can now do them in my shop while I am continuing my business. So that has brought about transformational change in the way people do business. Not only that, if, for example, we're embarking on a process of paying for our insurance, if you want to pay for your insurance premium, health insurance that is, right now people have to queue, in circles, banks, and the like. So we want to now enable people to be able to use their mobile phones, and those who have internet to be able to use the internet to pay that. And if I am a farmer and I have 3 kids that are in school, instead of going to queue at that bank or whatever, if I can do it from my farm, and I'll be able to pay. So that's the impact. I'm able to continue what I'm doing. I'm able to continue my business. I'm able to take my child to school while I am actually, obliging to my dues that I have to pay. So this is how transformational it is.
I'm glad the tax payment is a little easier, because we're just about to face this in Dubai, so we're all a little scared and getting online. We're just getting used to the fact that come January we'll all be paying a little bit of tax here, online or not. We're still getting used to it. But
I think you just need to be bold. You need to be ready to take risks, because otherwise, if you don't take risks, you're not going to get any returns out of it.
Taavi, talk to us about, again, some of the systems that are in place in Estonia, and particularly this e-residency. And this has been in place for so long. And again, other countries can look at what you're doing. Africa can look at this. And I think that ease of the information that, Africa doesn't have to reinvent what's going on in the world. They can look and see what other countries have done. But what a difference has this made, the concept of the e-residency? And I believe it was a namesake of yours, Taavi, that put this in place.
Well, thank you for that. But first of all, the main difference that Estonia has done in comparison to all other countries is that we were the first in the world to introduce electronic identity for every single citizen of Estonia. And that was 15 years ago, 15 years ago. So imagine we are in the year 2017, and in most of the countries, we're still using a passport or an ID to visually identify you. So you have to visually show up somewhere physically, show the ID, and get some service from the public sector or private sector. And even more surprising, we use these kind of things. It's a pen. To
and
scribble.
Good that you still have one.
Exactly. We scribble something in the corner, bottom corner of the paper, and we think this is a secure way of signing things. This is 2017. So how we do it in Estonia is that we have digital identity, meaning that we have a safe 256-bit encrypted key for every person to identify over internet. It's a very simple thing. Technologically, it's nothing that the other countries couldn't have. Some countries actually have, but they don't use it. And it makes all the difference when delivering private or public sector services. Now, let me give you just an example how big of enabler it is. There are basically several ways of showing you that I have some cash or money to buy something from you, right? This is one way of showing it. I show you physical cash. Other way is getting the bank card to an ATM or some sort of bank card reader and reading if I have money on that. And the third one is using my cell phone. There are some other ways, but basically these are the most common ones. Now, this is like the passport of the physical passport. I need to physically meet you to actually show you that I have this cash. With those technologies, I can do the transaction while being in Estonia with anyone who is in Dubai or in Ethiopia, Eritrea, Rwanda, Peru. So this is the huge enabler, enabling the access to our wallet. Now imagine what can be done if we enable the access to actually imposing our will, not actually needing to meet and show your ID to anyone, but doing it over internet securely and safely. That's the main difference.
Yes, indeed, and that's the direction we're all going on. You want to come in on this discussion?
Yeah, sure. I am an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
so I'm always looking for opportunities. And this is a real case. I didn't know I was going to meet you. 3 weeks ago, no, maybe 4 weeks ago, I went to get my digital ID at the Peruvian registration office. I made a long line. I paid the amount of money I had to pay. And then they told me, we're sorry, in this office, we don't process electronic IDs. So you have to go to another office another day, and I had to keep my receipt for a long time. The same day, in the evening, I went onto the Estonian e-residency system. I applied online. I uploaded a copy of my passport. I uploaded a copy of my ID. And 3 or 4 days later, I get an email from the police in Estonia saying, your e-residency has been approved. Just come to this office to pick it up. So as an entrepreneur, you look for opportunities because Estonia is setting up an entrepreneurial ecosystem that it will allow entrepreneurs from all over the world to exchange information, get access to a lot of resources that we can use to increase our opportunities for work, for business, for access to technology.
And I believe you're going to Estonia pretty soon, so they're going to welcome you.
Estonia is hosting the Startup Nation Summit.
Right, yes.
It's bringing leaders of entrepreneurship and government leaders from all over the world, and to discuss policies and to discuss opportunities on how different governments and different institutions can support entrepreneurs and support the formation of startups all around the world. And with a concept of bringing different regions of the world together. And yes, it's something that brings opportunities for everybody.
That sounds very exciting. But Taavi, tell us, how important is that e-residency? And when we look at what's happening in Europe at the moment, particularly when we look at Brexit, what are the advantages for Estonia in terms of that e-residency? If we're registered, can Gary go there and actually set up a business? Can he do business in Europe easier because he has this access?
Well, e-residency...
can Innocent do the same?
Yeah. Well, e-residency is something that we introduced a couple of years ago, giving people from any other country other than Estonia the opportunity to have digital identity applied by just getting it from the Estonian government. And this actually allows you to do business in Estonia without actually being there. All the transactions you can do online. So that's the point. Having a digital identity gives you tremendous opportunities that you don't have so far. Giving the access to your wallet electronically can lead to apps like Booking.com helping you to book a hotel room in Dubai. And now, giving access to your identity helps you to declare your taxes, register your child, to anything. And this is, I believe, a huge chance for African countries because I just saw a tweet there. Let's become a little bit interactive. I saw a tweet saying education is answer to everything. And that's probably correct. Kofi Annan said that education is the greatest equalizer in the world. But I would say that internet and e-government is at least the second equalizer in the world. So basically, if you don't have a physical infrastructure, if you live very far from the municipal or government office, if you have access to digital services, you can be like 1,000 kilometers away. You can be 10,000 kilometers away and still enjoy the services. So and you know, the good news for every African leader who is present in the room, it's incredibly cheap compared to building physical infrastructure. E-government is not an expensive solution, and it's not about technology. Technology is easy. It's all about leadership.
And a perfect one here for you to come in on in terms when we look at the great equalizer that digitization is. And we look at Africa as a whole continent, but particularly looking at Rwanda. And we're going to be hearing from the leader soon. So maybe there's a few things that you can put out there that he might address to when he talks with John later on. But tell me about that equalization and the opportunities that is giving for all of people who may not have had access to the job market, who may have been struggling there. Were young entrepreneurs, did they exist 10 years ago? Was there an opportunity for them? I mean, it must have opened a very, very different market and a very progressive one would hope as well.
Yeah, it is a great equalizer. And before I say that, let me underline one statement. Creating an enabling environment is very vital. And I like what Taavi said, that it is an equalizer. By the way, Rwanda has ranked #2 in Africa and number 41 in the whole world in terms of doing business. This is a report by World Bank that just came out yesterday. So that enabling environment and is what actually ushers our young generation onto the stage to be able to do business. Right now we have young people who are doing business across Africa who would have not been able to do it about 5 years ago. We have a company called AC Group that is using technology to enable transportation services, to pay for your transport fees. And this service is being exported to West Africa. We have now, it's going to about 3-4 West African countries where he's exporting the services. 5 years ago, this guy had no chance. But because of technology, he's able to do it. Number two, when you come to Rwanda, you get your visa online. I mean, any African, by the way, and actually everyone, you come to Rwanda, visa, you apply online, you get it. It's just stamped as you enter the country. That is what technology is able to do. In terms of digital identity that Taavi mentioned about, we are exploring new technologies, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and now we're looking at a very particular technology, digital object architecture, DOA. This is where you go down to the basics and you identify an object. And this object could be a person, could be your land, could be your any object. Now with this, you are able to be linked to all the ecosystem to be able to do different services. And right now we are using PKI infrastructure, public key infrastructure, to do procurement in government.
Yes.
Right now there's no submission of the, otherwise would have been these big papers. No, all that is gone. It's done online right now. In courts in Rwanda, right now judges don't have to carry big files. They are accessed online. So when you're in a courtroom, these guys are accessing their files. Exhibit number what, then they go online, they're able to see it. So this is what technology is doing to level the playground, if you will. Otherwise, this guy would have needed a big office to be able to set up his law firm and everything. But technology is leveling that playground. This guy is able to use one computer, access to internet, and he is able to have his office. He's able to go out and argue the case. So these are some of the services, these are some of the enabling points that technology is allowing us to be able to provide.
Yeah. And really making life easier for everybody.
Simplifying it. And Taavi mentioned it, it's actually not about technology.
Yes.
It's about the mindset, it's about the leadership. You know, if there are 10 steps to be able to do a service, how do you use technology to limit them to 4? You know, you go into the mechanics of how this service is done. You look at what is unnecessary, what is a waste in terms of time and resources. You cut it and you streamline it to what is key and is needed. And you bring it down to a very affordable level.
And to what's important, what's practical. Gary, you want to come in here, please?
Well, how do we create the next big opportunities, the next billion-dollar companies, the next unicorns? You have big problems in areas of education, areas of poverty, access to water, access to energy, access to food.
And in many countries around the world, this is the case.
All these problems are huge in many countries around the world, especially in emerging economies. So there is a big opportunity. If you can actually get 1,000 million or 1 billion users or consumers of something that can buy you $1 per year or 10 cents per month, 10 cents per month, but you don't think of 10 people, 100 or a million, 10 million, you have to think big on how to solve these problems, then you can create the next billion-dollar companies. And how can you achieve that? Using technologies to solve these big world challenges in terms of all these problems that we have around the world.
And with that great thought, I'm going to leave that with our audience to think about, and hopefully we'll be able to revisit this thought throughout the panels. We're going to have to wrap it up. We have a very special visitor coming, and so we're going to take our leave and leave the stage. I really want to thank the three of you, Innocent, Taavi also, and Gary. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing that with us. Plenty of thought there for our colleagues, and indeed for the leader of Rwanda later on. Hopefully he'll pick up on some of your ideas. Once again, thank you so much.
Thank you.